no public outrage, I don't hear no public cry about sending young men and women where empires go to die. We lost people and treasure in Vietnam, and there still ain't no upside. We're doing the same in a no-win game where empires go to die. It's a new world order agenda with a demonic rising tide.
You can advertise your business on Night Dreams Talk Radio, and you will be heard worldwide. Why not contact us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com. Night Dreams Talk Radio, After Dark, wants to give a big shout out to all the truckers that listen to our show.
You're listening to my friend Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio, the best in paranormal radio.
Well, I can't say it's the best, but we are definitely on the radio. Our guest tonight is Terry Lovelace. He was abducted, had an implant put into him, and you know what? It's just now going to start getting heavy. Terry, are you still with us, my friend?
You bet I am.
So, I got to ask you a question. Then we're going to get into when you were in the hospital and what the military did to you and all this stuff. I got to ask you, I don't think at least a lot of, I don't call them a species, I call them humanoids, are not friendly towards men. A lot of people like Calvin Parker and a lot of people that claim that they've been abducted, they always tell me the same thing, that they're evil. They're not here to serve man. But yet, I still get a few people come on and say, hey, they're here to save mankind. They're here to save the planet. Well, if they're here to save the planet, they're sure not doing anything to do that, are they?
Sure not. I think those people are living in a fantasy land. And I think, maybe the United States government has a interest in supporting that view. And, like I say, they've got a duty to mitigate the terror. They've got a duty to stop people from knowing the truth. And the truth is that they come here and that they take farm animals and that they take human beings. And that's a fact. And, David Paulides, I love how he says this. He says, people say serial killers or, animal predation. But every time every time somebody goes missing, it's always done perfect. I mean, they disappear within 10 feet of somebody else, and then bad weather moves in almost immediately and disrupts the rescue effort. When I started writing my book in 2017, I don't want to get off track here, but I just want to say, there was a young man 32-year-old guy from Bartlesville, Oklahoma, went missing in Devil's Den. And it made press. And it was fun. It was just odd circumstance. I happened to be writing my book at the time. And they never did find him until March of 2019. And they found the top of his skull, the crown of his skull, sitting on a log 5 feet off the trail, in an area that had been searched 100 times where people walk by every day. And it's all they ever found of the guy.
Now, isn't that strange right there? A friend of mine who's no longer with us, Art Bell, he would call me up occasionally and we would talk about his shows. I actually was in retirement for 10 years. I've been in broadcasting since 76. I got out of it for 10 years. I was retired and I get a phone call back, couple Septembers ago, and it was Art. He goes, Gary, you need to get back into it. I said, I'm retired. He goes, no, get rid of your Harleys. Don't ride your motorcycle anymore. Get on internet.
I read that. I hope you didn't sell the bike.
Well, actually, I let my son ride it, and he, almost died. He crashed it really bad. I mean, he punctured a lung, a whole bunch of stuff. Now, that bike is history, but I still have my firefighter Harley, and I'll tell you what, it's sitting, and next summer I plan to go for a long ride on it. But, we would talk about some of his guests he had on. One thing it used to puzzle him and me is some of these people would, go missing, and then they would show up. They would be found like in a pond or found in a lake or found, some weird place. with no shoes on and no socks. Now, if somebody was going to commit suicide, they're not going to take their shoes off and they're not going to take their socks off. They're going to jump into something. They're just going to jump into it. They're not going to do that. And there was a lot of those type of reportings that was going on back in the mid-'90s. It just makes you wonder, if it's all tied into what you went through. And maybe for some reason they rejected you two, or what I was talking about last night and earlier before you came on, these abductions and human mutilations and cattle mutilations and what other type of mutilations have been going on for a long time, not 100 years. We're talking about going back to the pyramids, undoubtedly.
Sure enough.
So if they were experimenting, they would have got all the information they needed by now. So there's got to be some other motive, what they're looking for and what they're doing. And that's where I am totally puzzled. I can't comprehend in my small brain why this would continue on, repeatedly, year in and year out. And implants, I saw the picture of Timothy Cullen's implant. And, the lab report said it was compounded with silver and other alloys, but it was the silver that it could have never been compounded with these other alloys on our planet.
Yeah.
It's weird stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see the thing in my leg?
Yeah. That is really bizarre.
Well, I had never intended to tell this story. I mean, I was just going to take this to the grave. And in 2012, our situations really are parallel. I went to the ER. I had an X-ray. Text says, "Hey, Mr. Lovelace, how'd you come up with a piece of metal in your leg?" Mm-hmm. And I said, I don't have any metal in my leg. But it sounds like you went through the same thing. The radiologist came down, and he says, "Well, I want to examine your leg for the scar." And I said, "Doc, I ain't got a scar there." And he says, "You have to have a scar there because this item with the two wires on it couldn't get in deep into your skin, violate the integrity of your skin, get down into your fascia without there being a scar. There's always a scar." And he looked at my leg, and he was disturbed. He says, "You don't have a scar." I said, "Yeah, told you." And I said, "Doc, how often is it that you see an object under the skin like this, buried deep in the tissue without there being a corresponding scar?" And he said, "Never. I've been a radiologist 23 years. I've never seen it before." That hit me in the face like a punch. I mean, it did. I knew. 1977 all over again. I knew.
And did you have trouble sleeping that night?
Oh my God, yes. Yeah.
Now, have you been able to, even as time goes by, remember more and more what happened to you?
I have, and I've had a couple of hypnosis sessions, and those were really frightening and remarkable. I'm working on a second book about them. I have another hypnosis session tomorrow. And what's come out is that they took me when I was 4 and 5 years old. And he would take me, and I'd be in this big round room with a gray padded floor, and there was a woman there that we called Sue. And I remember there was an Asian woman from Japan who lived in our neighborhood. And all us neighborhood kids, we called her Sue. That was her name. And this entity that was in this room with us kids reminded us of Sue. So that's what we called her. And there were 8 of us, same kids. I'd love to hook up with them today and find them. I wonder if they'd remember, being there. I certainly didn't remember. I remembered seeing this flying saucer when I was 8, and when I was 11, I saw another one. But this happened when I was 4 and 5 years old. And we would sit around inside this thing, and I don't remember ever taking a potty break or anything like that. And we played with these geometric forms. And she was always trying to get us to move them with our minds. And she talked to us telepathically, and it was crazy because we could hear crystal clear in our heads, and we could talk back to her with our minds. And I remember one day asking her, said, "Sue, why can't we talk like this back home?" And she said, "Because you're not ready yet." And I thought, oh man, I got to wait till I'm 5, you know.
So,
and
what do you think?
It was a crazy.
What do you think their motive is? What do you, after you gone through all this, and then we're going to get into the hospital thing, and then I think James has some questions to ask you too, because he's just dying to ask you.
Sure.
I mean, overall, what do you think is going on?
You know, I don't know. I know this. I've got probably 50 pictures of UFOs that I've taken in the past 5 years. And I could send you some if you'd like.
Oh, I like to see them. Yeah, please do.
They're crazy. You'll get a kick out of them. And we had right after I published the book, we had a span of about 14 months where these helicopters, I know this sounds cliche too, I hate to say it, but it's true. These helicopters would come flying over our house. And my wife is like, what's up with the traffic copter, And I'm like, I don't know. So I went outside and I started taking pictures of these helicopters, and I was able to classify them. They were either Roberts helicopters or Airbus 350, or they were military. They had no markings on them whatsoever, none, and tinted windows. And they would buzz our house. So I'm taking pictures of these things, and then I put them up on my screen, and there's UFOs in the background.
Interesting. I wonder if they were UFOs, manipulating, what do you call it? Shifting into a form of a helicopter. Shape-shifting.
Could be. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I wish I knew. As a matter of fact, the Dallas Morning News from March 29th, 2019, there's a segment in the back section of the back of the paper that says, "Why are there so many military helicopters flying over Dallas?" And then I live in Garland, which is a suburb of Dallas. And in the first paragraph, it rephrases it and says, "Why are there so many military helicopters over Garland?"
Oh.
And I wanted to say, I know why, they're at my house.
Yeah, I would get nervous, in a situation where you have one right above your house and this, hovering. I had a guest who in Texas, he was out, just taking, he was a photographer, and he went out to like old farms and he was taking pictures of that stuff. And he came up to this old farm, and he thought it was kind of strange because on actually on the property of the abandoned farm, there was a radio tower. It said property of the U.S. government with a chain link fence. And he noticed there was a silo there. And he noticed all of a sudden 2 guys came out of the silo in uniform. And, and he described, what went on my show. And during the break, he sent me a picture. There was a black helicopter above his house.
Yeah.
And it really freaked him out. Well, 2 days later, he went on to another talk show, Coast to Coast, and he was, saying the same thing. And then he texts me during their break. He said, "Gary, I have 2 helicopters just hovering over my house." Because his wife won't let him smoke in the house, so he goes out to the rear, back kitchen door, and he smokes. Now, isn't that kind of strange? You're talking about UFOs, maybe a secret military base on an old farm, and all this stuff, and then you're talking about it, and all of a sudden these helicopters appear. It's strange, but it does happen.
Yes. Yeah, I've had some strange things.
Now, our show runs to 9